Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiffany, and I'm a person who stutters and a speech language pathologist. Um, Today, what I'm going to be talking about is job interviewing as a person who stutters, because this can be pretty difficult. Um, because it's a hard situation for most people, and it is especially hard as a person who stutters. It can be because if you're already nervous, it can make stuttering worse. And then there's all these negative societal perceptions people have about stuttering, and so you know if you're going into an interview, you're trying to impress them, and so you don't know what they think about stuttering. You don't know what implicit biases they have or perceptions they have about it, and so you don't know how they're going to react to you as you're trying to impress them. I have some pieces of advice to give you, as I actually just finished a bunch of interviews. I switched jobs. Next week is my last week of my current practice, and I'm going to move to a couple different practices where I'm working as a speech therapist. And so I did a lot of interviews. I did about 25 interviews, and I got almost every job I applied for. So it was very successful. And so I think some of the tips that I'm going to share with you today, I think were part of how successful my interviewing was. Well, that and the fact that being a speech therapist, there's a lot of jobs. But I think that is helpful to kind of deal with your stuttering and address it in an interview. The first tip I can give you is to do just that: address your stuttering, to advertise your stuttering, because if you are stuttering in your interview, first of all, they probably think you're just nervous, which is not necessarily true. And maybe even if it is true, it's not the whole truth. And so you don't want them to think that you're so nervous, you're just like stuttering a lot. You don't want them to think that perception of you, especially if it's not true. Um, and so you advertising your stutter not only makes you look way more confident, but it also helps people to understand what is going on, and also set up the context of how you're going to be as an employee. Because you know what? You don't want to go through an interview, or I don't, at least I don't want to go through an interview and not stutter and then get there and start stuttering. I don't want them to question me or question the decision to hire me, or think any weird thoughts about me. I want those thoughts to come up initially, and if they're negative and they're not okay with it, I don't want to work there. And so I don't want to be in a situation where they don't know. I think that makes it a lot harder. And being a covert stutterer, or a person who stutters covertly in my past, I definitely have been in situations where I pass as fluent and I try to hide my stuttering, and then I no longer can do that. And then all of a sudden they find out, and it's awkward and weird and harder than it needed to be. Um, so yeah, that's my first piece of advice. One way that I did it in my run of interviewing is I put in my cover letter that was appropriate for me, because I was applying for speech therapy jobs and I'm a person who specializes in stuttering. And so I could say like, oh, I specialize in stuttering because of my personal experience with stuttering as a person who stutters. Yeah, so I don't know how easy that would be for you to do in your respective markets. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily impossible, but it could be harder to bring it up kind of in a casual way. But either way, you can also do it at the interview. So I did not do this because I didn't feel like I needed to, because I put it in my cover letter. But like what a lot of times I'll do when I meet like new families that I'm working with is say, like, once I start stuttering, I'll pause and be like, oh, by the way, I'm a person who stutters, just so you know. That's what that is. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm happy to talk about it. Um, and or just say, oh, by the way, I'm a person who stutters. That's it. um, yeah, but that can be really helpful, because then you feel more comfortable having them know that you stutter, so then you feel like it's okay to stutter. And then they understand. So it's great. It's a win-win. Tip number 2 is to use your stuttering as an advantage, because you know what? You deserve to work in a place where people respect you and they treat you the way you deserve to be treated, and they're okay with the way you talk. You do not want to be in a situation where someone is not okay with your stuttering, because it sucks. It puts you in a really weird spot as a person who stutters, because then you feel like you can't stutter. You feel bad when you stutter. Maybe you avoid talking, things like that. It's just not a healthy environment for you. So if someone is really not okay with your stuttering, despite your education and, like, whatever, I guess you educating them, then you don't want to work for them. That's their loss. You don't deserve to be in that situation. Sorry. Um, so yeah. So what I definitely did in my interviews is I got almost every job. So I was able, I was in a situation where I got to pick what jobs I wanted. And so if someone was weird about my stuttering, or if they made a weird comment, or I could tell they had these like weird implicit biases or weird stereotypes about stuttering and about me because of my stuttering, I didn't want to work there, and I turned those jobs down. And I'm okay with that because it's just, you don't deserve it. It's not worth it. Um, and then the jobs that I did take, I felt like were actually like the people who were the coolest about my stuttering. Like it definitely unconsciously or subconsciously, I think it made me like those jobs more because the people interviewing me were so okay with it and so cool about it that I felt more comfortable wanting to work. I wanted to work there. It made me feel more comfortable working there as a person who stutters. Um, so yeah, so use it as an advantage. I mean that's one thing that's cool about stuttering is it's kind of um like a good filter. Like you can judge how good of a friend or how good of a boyfriend or like an employer someone's going to be because of how they react to you. Obviously don't if they don't know anything about stuttering, give them a chance, but especially if they like still feel weird after you like tell them and you educate them, then it's not worth your time, I think. Um, okay, tip number 3, this is my last tip, is to ask them. This is not something I did every time, but I found when I did it, it was really cool. But if it was appropriate, like if there was a moment where it was okay to like it felt like it was a good time to do this, as ask them if they're actually if they have any questions about your stuttering, and ask them if they have any concerns about you as a person who stutters working in that position. What I did in one of the jobs that I ended up taking at the end, because I had talked throughout the interview a little bit about like some of the experiences I had with people like kind of discriminating against me because of my stuttering, like in college and also when applying for jobs and stuff. Uh, and so it had come up a couple times. And so at the end, I was just like, like I feel like I shouldn't have to ask this question, but because of my experiences, I feel like I do. But do you have any questions for me or any concerns up front about my stuttering in this position? Like, is there any reason that you think I couldn't do the job? Is there any concern that you have? Any questions that I could address? And kind of just give them a moment to like be able to address maybe some concerns they had. Like as a speech therapist, the people interviewing me were speech therapists. There were fewer people who like had serious doubts because they were, they at least had probably met someone who started before. But if you're not in that market, like I can see how people might like not know anything about stuttering and maybe have weird biases or thoughts about stuttering, and so that gives you a chance to address those and show that they're not true, and then that can really improve your chance of getting the job and also improve them, the way they interact with you as an employer. So that I think that's a cool thing to do if it's appropriate. I definitely had one of my clients do that. He was telling me that he had an interview and he asked them about his stuttering, and they thought it was really cool that he did that. So yeah, those are some tips. I mean, I know it's hard. Like I I cannot imagine how hard it is for some people in certain jobs. I've heard so many stories, and I just sometimes I realize how lucky I am that I'm in a job that I feel like is kind of a stuttering safe job. Like being a speech therapist, people usually get it, and if they don't, then I don't. That's the minority. I don't want to work for them, but most people get it at least to some degree. And so I feel for you if you are applying for a job where people don't get it and like no like hard, it feels like no one gets it because that can be so hard. But it's so cool that you're in a situation where you have the opportunity to educate so many people about stuttering and to improve their perceptions and improve the climate of that job for future people who stutter and for yourself. you are in a position to really be empowered and to like make a difference. And so I kind of am jealous of that. But it definitely can be harder on you, and you have to be, maybe more empowered in order to feel like you can do that. But I believe in you, and I believe you can. So anyway, leave your comments below if you have questions or comments, or if you're struggling with this, or if you're an employer and you have thoughts on this. I'd love to hear them. But yeah, anyway, subscribe to my channel, like, whatever, comment, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye.